open your eyes to things you didn't know. And Jay-Z has a great famous quote that he says, "You don't know what you don't know." And if you grow up in the communities, urban communities, minorities, me, Latino, African American communities, there's a lot of things you don't know. You feel that your world is just that community itself, right? That radius that you're living in within maybe a mile or two, east or west. And here we are, everyone. Welcome back. And as we continue our series here with our financial, I would say, more of our concepts and principles, and how to kind of get our millennial and Gen Zers on the road and journey to our eventually building wealth. And if you haven't done it yet, you're building it, and just how to change more of our mindset. Because at the end of the day, what I've realized so far, what really makes up for the majority of the individuals that I've had interactions with, or behaviors that I've seen of individuals that have built their wealth, or for the most part have wealth, is it's a journey. And although contrary to popular belief, that we believe that for some reason a lot of individuals basically were born into wealth, most of them are self, in the sense they've made their wealth, they built it along the way by having certain habits. And that is what I really want to talk about today's video here, on certain habits that the wealthy have. And what I've noticed working in the banking industry and dealing with wealthy individuals, that majority of the time, the first habit that I noticed was that most of the people that were wealthy, you really couldn't tell they were wealthy, right? There was no way I can tell whether they were coming from wealth or they weren't. And I don't mean like the individuals that we see now, like influencers and people that kind of pose to be rich. I'm talking about wealthy individuals, not rich. There's a difference between rich and wealthy, right? And that's in a whole other video. But from the wealthy individuals, I can never really tell. I would say never really tell when they were wealthy. It wasn't until they sat down with me, and then I was able to start a conversation, and we would open up their accounts, and we would find out what they were looking for, or what it was that they were trying to accomplish. And I was able to see that these individuals were wealthy already. And that's one thing that we can all take away from that, right? The one thing I took away from that was that sometimes looks is not what you think it is. And we all heard that in life, like, don't judge a book by its cover. And I learned from that was that you need to stop trying to impress people. A lot of us that grow up in minority communities, as myself, urban communities, the first thing we did when I know my first paycheck was go buy some clothes and sneakers and try to look good to impress either my friends, family, or even the opposite sex, obviously, but just impress others so they can know that I was doing well. And what I realized, that the wealthy don't do that. So that's one habit we want to accomplish, is not try to impress others and live below your means, right? Number two, what I realized from the wealthy was that they never really, I think for the most part, I never really saw them buying cars, or at least new cars. They never really bought new. Some of them didn't have cars at all, and the ones that did have cars, they had them used, and typically held them for a long time. I'm talking about maybe 5 to 7 years, depending on what car it was. And the longer they could hold it, the better. But if it was in a situation where the car wasn't worth it, they would move on to the next one. But habit number two was they didn't buy new cars. They bought used, or they never really had cars. So for me, growing up in a minority community, the opposite of that was most of us that weren't able to afford cars. The first thing we did when we got a good paycheck or a good job was a brand new car, or a new lease, or a car that was out of our league, in the sense that the car cost probably more than when we were getting paid at our jobs, but we were able to afford it by car payments. So if you're trying to accomplish wealth and you really want to stay broke, go buy a new car. I'm just kidding. Don't do it. If you have to buy something used, try to Hopefully, it's a good car you can hold it for a couple of years, and maintenance on it is not too crazy. Do your research on good vehicles that you can drive for a couple of years, and if you really don't want to buy an old car, buy a used car that's maybe 3 or 4 years old. They're not that bad in shape, and they're gonna cost a lot cheaper than a brand new car. And whatever you do, try to stay out of leases. Leases are great. They seem great in the beginning, but you're basically taking out a loan for a car that's not yours, and you're gonna pay that for whatever the life of the line is. And once you finish paying up that loan, you don't keep that car, so you gotta go do it again. So the cycle that you never stop. And I've never seen, like I said, the wealthy, never seen them with leases. If anything, the ones that I did see that were really wealthy, they would rent their cars if they had to go on some type of trips, or they took public transportation, bikes, or they bought, like I said, used cars. And the most crafty way of getting around was walking. A lot of them did not have expensive cars. That was one of the habits. Another habit was they weren't trying to act rich, right? If anything, they were the opposite. They were acting poor. And again, I'm not saying that there's a way of rich or act poor, but for the most part, for me growing up in a minority community, and I keep on saying that because I've seen all these habits and I've been part of that. It's normally the individuals that are the most, I would say, poorest as far as their mindset, that are trying to act rich in the sense they're buying the cars, they're buying the clothes, the brands, they're wearing these things, they're wearing the jewelry, they're wearing all these expensive things on themselves because they don't feel, I personally feel that that's the reason why they don't feel that I have value other than what they have on them, possessions. So the wealthy are the opposite. They try to keep their life very simple, and they don't have many possessions. And the ones that they do have are things that are only assets and add value to their lives, as opposed to having possessions that are liabilities. And as we read in Rich Dad Poor Dad books, we understood what the rich dad meant by buying assets as opposed to liabilities. And not only individuals that grew up in, like myself, in urban communities buy our liabilities, also middle class. We buy a lot of liabilities in the sense that if you're living in the suburbs, you're buying a brand new car, you're buying a single family home, you're buying all these things that are probably taking money out of your pocket, but not really putting money into it. So if we can change that habit as far as not trying to act rich, acting poor for the meantime, until you're able to actually accumulate these things with your assets, it's probably one of the greatest things you'll do for yourself in the long run. And as hard as it is nowadays because of all this influencers and lifestyles and things that you want to do, because obviously it looks so incredibly obviously enticing, it's probably one of the hardest things to do. And what I've noticed from the wealthy, that the ones that are the wealthiest are the ones that are really good at this, acting poor when they're actually rich or when they're actually wealthy. And the opposite, the individuals that probably don't have any type of assets are acting rich, but they actually shouldn't be. They should be staying where they're at and trying to stay low key. Another the habits that we might want to take is learning to read about our certain things that are going to make us money. Learning about investments, learning about assets, learning, picking up a book about what the next asset class might be, right? What are the pros or the cons? Just education itself, self-education. One of the reasons why I love working on individuals that were actually wealthy was that I realized that they always had books on them. Everywhere they went, they were carrying books. They were always, if they were waiting for us to take care of them or attend them, they would always be sitting down. They wouldn't just be mindlessly on their phones. They would be reading a book. And always their books would be about their passions. But I realized that the wealthy are very, very interested in reading. And it doesn't have to be a financial book. It could be books. It could be a novel. It could be the history, biographies of individuals. But they were always very interested in self-learning and really educating themselves on certain topics that interested them. And that's something that I picked up later on in my life that I honestly I wish I would have done at a younger age. But the more you read, the more aware you become of certain things, and the more you see the world at a bigger, I would say, has a bigger meaning to it. And not even that, but it just, you start to open your eyes to things you didn't know. And Jay-Z has a great famous quote that he says you don't know what you don't know. And if you grow up in the communities, urban communities, minorities, me Latino, African American communities, there's a lot of things you don't know. You feel that your world is just that community itself, right? That radius that you're living in within maybe a mile or two, east or west. That's kind of your community, and you kind of don't really get out of there. You just go to work and come back, and you really don't know anything outside of those spectrums. For me, living in New York City, I lived in Queens, live in Queens. I didn't really know anything but that area. And for me, Manhattan, where obviously that's the city, was a very distant area to me, where I only went for class trips. It wasn't until I got older, to now to my 30s, that I'm actually more interested in going in there and realizing how different it is, right? Just the cleanliness, Central Park. You learn these things like, wow, this actually exists. This is a neighborhood. This is what a real neighborhood is supposed to look like. And you start having more ambitions, and you start really taking care of your neighborhood and figuring out how you can kind of not maybe resemble it. I mean, not maybe replicate it, but maybe try to make your neighborhood a lot more better. Whether it's cleaner, whether it's community events, whether it's contacting your local district representatives to see if you can make changes to the parks, just safety measures. You start realizing that your community is a lot more than just living in it. So for me, knowing that I didn't know those things really made a difference. So you don't know, you don't know. So the more you can learn about things that you don't know about, and even if it's a article or a Google search on something that's actually legit, makes you a lot more better than where you were yesterday. Better than where you were yesterday, you're moving in the right direction, and that goes with anything. Starting on anything makes a really big difference. And another habit that I learned from the wealthy behaviors, was that they always had a mindset in as far as like they were always open to a lot of things, right? They never were like closed minded to anything. They always believed that that things could be possible. They never felt like nothing was impossible, and that is something that is very hard to come by nowadays, because we're such in a world where we have so much things coming at us, news, negativity from all certain sizes, so many things happening around the world, and we're learning about them so fast because of the technology. And I think it's very easy for us to get bombarded with how bad things are in the world, and you kind of don't have hope. So one thing is what I realized for a lot of wealthy individuals, that they had a lot of hope. They felt that everything always gets better. They felt that just life itself and the world was on upwards mobility, and everything was just passive. Like everything was temporary. And whether it was the sufferings, whether it was what we're in right now, pandemic, they know that it was just a temporary situation, and everything's gonna get better eventually. And it's a great mindset to have, because it's very easy to get, especially myself, caught up in the news and all those things that we get bombarded with, that we start to lose hope. So one thing you want to learn is just always keep hope, whether it's for your dreams, whether it's for your health, whether it's for your family, friends, neighborhood. Just always have hope, and it eventually helps you also as well for your own future. We might not right now we might not be wealthy, we might not have what we want to have, but hoping that you're gonna eventually get there helps you a lot in coping as well. Helps you come up with creative ideas, and you start becoming a lot more thinker. Become a thinker, right? Thinking about what possibilities I might have. How can I navigate this? How can I navigate that? And I think the more you're able to navigate and think, the more possibilities you come up with, the more ideas, and it only gets better. And you're gonna have a lot of roadblocks. Believe me, you're gonna have a lot of roadblocks, but it gets better. So, if anything, whatever you're going through right now, hopefully you're gonna get through this. It's gonna get better, and everything's just temporary. And another habit I would say that I realized in the wealthy was that they really didn't really spend a lot of money. Let me just rephrase that. They were very wealthy. They could buy anything they wanted to buy. To be honest, I ran into an individual that had close to For me, that's a lot of money. Everybody has their own way of thinking about wealth, but the individual had, let's say, $5 million in his account, just there making him money. He could have bought, you know, again, he could have bought nice stuff. He could have bought furniture. He could have bought a bigger house. He could have probably moved to some part of the city and have an expensive place to stay. But the individual that I spoke to lived very humbly. Has been living in his apartment that he lived there for the last 20 years, and didn't really buy designer stuff. Didn't really care for expensive clothes. Didn't really care for expensive cars. Didn't really have like the need to spend everything he had, even though he could buy anything. So I believe that's the game of wealth, which is kind of under, you ever hear the saying why the rich gets richer and the poor get poorer. I always felt that, I know there's some beliefs to that, some truths to that, but I felt that it was because they had like some type of advantage, and that no matter what, they can be scrupulous with their money, and just throw it out the garbage can, and they'll be wealthy again. The thing is that for the most part, the real truly wealthy individuals, they built it all for themselves, right? They worked along the way, they were able to invest, and they were able to reap the rewards. Then they just kept doing that. They kept the same model of saving and investing. And it just multiplies and multiplied. And because they don't have the need to spend it, it just keeps growing. And that's why that saying is, I think, the rich get richer, because once they have experienced everything, basically what life has to offer, they don't really feel I need to spend it all to feel this happiness or extravagance or be of purpose. If you can right now be content where you're at right now, I think personally, this is a personal note, you won't be content with the millions of dollars. There will always be something more you want to have or need in order to have that void filled. So before you go out there and start building wealth, make sure that you're content where you're at right now. Make sure you're content with your debt, with your brokenness, with your bank account being negative, with the, not being able to find a job. All these things that we have to battle. Content with that, because if you're not content with that, when you do have the things you want, you won't be content with that neither. So that won't change your feeling, your inner self. You have to work on that yourself before that. So what I went by the wealthy not really spending that much was they still have the same concepts of saving and investing. They really didn't let that go. Just because they became wealthy didn't mean they stopped doing it. So this is kind of like a lifelong thing. And that's one thing we want to get that approach of, that everything we do here is long term. It's not just we do it for one day or 2 months, 3 months, we flip and we sell and we become wealthy. No, it's a process, it's a lifestyle. And just like I always wondered, I always realized that when I started working out when I was younger, I always didn't look at it as an overnight thing. I just felt I liked it. I wanted to do it for a long time, and I'm still doing it. And I know that it's a long-term thing. So diets, a lot of different workouts that individuals come up with, I never really gravitated to that, because I know that I'm not looking for a quick fix. I am in it for the long run. And that goes the same way when it comes to saving and investing, because there's a lot of new assets, Bitcoin. There's a lot of things coming up right now that we can invest in, that we can put our money into. And these are all great things. But remember that most of the things you're going to be doing it for, you want to do it long term. It's not something you want to just think about, I'm going to jump into the hype, hopefully make money, sell high, and get out. A lot of individuals live that way, and they make great money. So everybody has different styles. But for the most part, I think the most relatively most simple way of investing and saving is just basically saving your money and putting in investments and letting it grow over time. Very simple. Not that much work needed from your end. I kind of compare it to like working out. Always say working out because I like to work out, and I kind of you can work out, and there's so many workouts, so many fad diets that you can do, and you get results within a short amount of time. But eventually you go back to your regular habits, and now you are back to where you started. So when you start building a workout for yourself that works out for you, and you do it long term, you kind of stick to it, regardless. You stick to it for many times because it works for you. So whenever it comes to saving and investing, you want to do something that works for you as far as how you are, how you deal with your situation, what you're comfortable with, and do it for the long run. And make sure you keep up on it. It's not an overnight thing. It's not a get rich quick scheme. And another habit before I go, the wealthy, I know that I really noticed from the wealthy, they don't do get rich quick schemes. They don't have time for that. They don't care for that. They don't believe in that. So if they don't do that, neither should we. I hope you got some information off this video, and follow me in my next one. And I hope these habits really change the way you think and you look at things. And I'm here, and I'm so glad that we're on this wealth journey together. And take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.